Anyway, I move them into the computer around level 3 or level 4, depending on the student. Has to be done at some point. Bringing in the new styles and the new tools. Yeah, got to do this. So there are some in the books that are out here. You can look at them. They're not for sale. I'm sorry, because I only have one copy with me. But you can at least see what they are. There are units that are based on more modern tools. But as a teacher, feel free to, as you introduce maybe a 9th chord, to just easily ease them into the 9th chord by saying, you know, let's have you write an entire piece based on 9 chords. So anything can be made into a tool. Bonnie, do you do that? Is that how you work with it? Do you do it one tool at a time?
Not exactly the way you're describing it, but I love hearing, that's why I love hearing other people talk about it, because you always think, yeah, I can also do that here, and I could do that here. Because there's so many ways to approach it and so many great ideas.
Yeah,
you know, it just, it's never ending.
It is, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. And just like there are two workbook series that Kevin and I did, the Music by Me, and then we got the Creative Composition Toolbox. If another publisher came to me and said, would you write a composition workshop? I'd say, yeah, absolutely. I'd do it 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, because I think it's so valuable to get students creating as just part of their fluency with the language. It's not a special thing. It's just normal. It's just normal. Talking about intermediate and advanced students, this gets, of course, things come up unexpectedly from every student. One of the things that maybe is a normal occurrence is there are students who are truly improvisers. So every time they play their composition, it's very notey, very syncopated. Is Jacob here? Yes.
Yes.
Your piece, I thought yours might be an improv, because it had that pop feel and that beautiful warm thing that can turn into other things easily. So I was really impressed that yours was notated as you played it. That was amazing. Although that's not what this festival is about. I think it could, go anywhere. But there are students who have very complicated pieces.
Let's go.
Is that for me? But you have these complicated improvs, and you're like, whoa, this is going to be really hard to write down because it changes every time. When I see a piece like that that's not going to happen for a composition, I just say, that is an amazing improv, and I hope you play it differently every time. Let's do a couple of recordings just to see what you can do with it. So I have the recording faction of the students, and then I have the notated faction, which I see composition is not the same as improv. Composition is careful construction in a particular way. And it can go places that an improv might not. So they're just different skills. So making the difference, being able to tell the difference between an improv and a composition is important as a teacher, so that you can, so a student didn't get shut down because they have to write all those syncopations into a computer program. I like the idea of opportunities like this festival as opposed to competitions. I don't think competitions work for young composers very well. I'll say that right, nice and loud right here. The irony of it is that I judge for them all the time. I'm always doing these national competitions, but the reason I say yes to that is because I know that what I'm going to have to say is not going to shut them down. The creative endeavor is getting into raw area and unsafe territory, because you're going to new places, you're trying new things. And if somebody comes along and says, why did you move the 5 chord to a flat 3rd chord? Well, I know exactly why. Well, but when somebody starts tearing that apart, the creative is going to go, ugh. Either they're going to say, I hate this, or they're going to say, this is too hard, I can't do this. It's too much, there's too much information. So it's so incredibly important in the creative endeavors that your job as a teacher is to fertilize the ground. And your job as a student is to do quantity and not worry about how good it is. Just keep making music, and it's going to formulate and become cool stuff over the years. As I mentioned before, it's really important to take advantage of the talent within your studio or your friends. If you're a young composer, take advantage of the people you know that do cool stuff. So if you know a juggler, work with a juggler. Create a juggling piece that involves juggling. If you know a dancer, write a little ballet. If you know somebody that plays really cool violin, write a piano and violin. Work for the people that you know. Even as adults, we love working with people we know because we learn the talents of what we're dealing with, and it becomes a real thing instead of this idea of a masterpiece. You're dealing with real people with real things to say, and that's one of the most important things to come out of this, I hope. Do we have a couple more minutes?
Yep.
Okay. I would love to hear both from teachers and from students about the things about the barriers that either hold you back or the barriers as a teacher that you can't seem to get beyond. I do a lot of this work, and so I'm always working about crashing through those things, either psychological things or physical things. So tell me some of the problems that come up. Yeah.
Improvisation just seems so much easier. How do you make that transition from having your students improvise, because you can do it so quickly, in 2 minutes, as to the structure and the notation?
Yeah. Well, that non-traditional notation is a big part of that, because the worst thing that happens is when they move directly from improv, where they're really truly free and they're playing and having fun, to having to ground it into something that someone else can do. It's not fun. It's not fun. So that non-traditional thing of just get it down so that each time that you play it comes back as the same thing.
And there's actually two different kinds of students. I mean, it seems like some really just want to improvise, and others are not comfortable at all with that. But if you tell them to write it down, then
they're more safe.
Then
they're more safe. So it really is a personality.
You need to have both.
Yeah, and a big part of composition too is having that sense of big form. And so I always talk in terms of musical glue. What's going to glue your piece together? And I don't care about what the other composers have done or the ABA or whatever. I can throw that out and say you can, come back to this section to reinforce it. And I always talk about repeats, but I'm always talking about how is this part glued to this part? Because if there's no glue, it's not going to. You might not get your message across. So I'm always thinking in terms of glue. So when you're trying to bring this sense of structure in, which is more the compositional element of it, communicate in broader, more artistic terms, as opposed to you have to do it this way. I think that works at least with the younger ages better, and also with older ages. I mean, don't make me do an ABA. I don't want to do theme and variations. But if somebody said to me, take this theme that you like so much and see what you can do with it, it probably might turn into theme and variations. But it's all how you say it.
This is usually a junior high school issue, and we're talking about the type of student who doesn't feel comfortable improvising, but who's composing. In my case, I have them all compose every year, just like you do in school, write a story, And so I had several times encountered this, where they would come in with a great idea, maybe something they heard in a pop song, and they picked up the bass, and they have this great beginning idea. And after the beginning idea, no matter what I do or what I tell them, they're stuck.
Is this with improvising or with composing?
Composing.
With composing.
Yeah.
With a student that's like that, which is that shut down, feeling like I can't do it,
Right.
then you give them the box. The smaller the box, the better. So if you have an idea, their great idea is dun, 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 and you're like, yeah, you can go, then if you as a teacher can help them improvise a little bit at the lesson just with what can you do with bump, bump, bump.
Well, usually they've got a whole A section worked out that sounds great, but they can't build it into a song beyond that. I don't know what would go with this, and
Yeah.
nothing feels right, and we're getting nervous.
Well, it I might, with that kind of thing, maybe have them do little snippet songs and have them say it's okay that it's short. Our job, I think, most of all, is to not shut them down. That's the main thing. So if they start running into those walls, when I run into a wall as a composer, I just change direction. I start working on something else, and then I come back where I say, that's a bad idea, and I throw it out. And then I just have to keep the wheels going.
Which is awesome, but these are kids that you're lucky they came up with one idea.
Yeah.
They're not gonna go off and try another one. The ones that do that are never a problem.
Yeah, well, maybe just introducing another tool into that idea and say, well, maybe if you could make this, just try this in a relative key, or move it to minor, or just a little. I usually teach by asking questions. So I'll say, hey, this is a great idea, and you want it longer, so maybe you could double the rhythms. What happens if you double the rhythms? Would that make it more majestic? Why don't you try that? So I'll throw little ideas that just break through the barrier. It's so hard because every student is so very different.
Well, these are as I said, think junior high especially, maybe beginning of high school, you know how that mentality is. And I've got this wonderful idea, but I'm not an improviser. I only know how to do this one idea.
Yeah.
And they're trying to do an actual composition to play a recital, you see. And nothing is going to be good enough to go with their wonderful idea because they got their idea from somewhere else. They built it into their own composition and they don't know how to make something that'll go with it.
Yeah, well, we talked about this yesterday a little bit, about how there really is no great idea. There's never a great idea.
But when you're that age, there's one
yes,
good
there
idea.
is.
Sorry.
I'm gonna say that.
One sponge.
Yeah, and I think at that point, you have to introduce tools. You have to say, okay, well, we have, let's try inverting it, let's try turning it upside down, inverting it. Let's try.
Forget about a B section if they can't think of a B section.
Just keep it in A section.
Yeah.
I do actually
That
think
may be a
variations.
secret. Variations, yeah.
Anything else? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, sometimes when I'm composing a song, I have a bunch of different ideas, and sometimes they're just tiny little snippets, but they can be in even different keys or something, and it's kind of hard to fuse it into just one song. And I think something that really helps when you kind of have that writer's block is if you have a really good understanding of just the chord progression that you're kind of looking for, and just almost oversimplifying it for your level, and just make it really simple, like a right-hand melody, then that can just expand into something really
That's
much bigger.
great advice. That's great advice. And it's always trying to go to the oversimplification, because you build, just like that blank page, you build from nothing. And if you build with too much, it's all going to go gobbledygook.
I always talk about how the most paralyzing thing is total freedom, which is ironic. The more parameters, you alluded to this, David. So I mean, that could be, like you said, chord progression. I was sitting on a cool little Clementi-esque moon for years, which was sitting in a file cabinet. I could play it anyway. And until I made a commitment, Well, the teachers asked me to give a little forum on writing a sonata, and I suddenly realized with great horror that I'd never written anything in sonata form. And it buckled down and just said, I'm going to write a sonata. And so, but taking that theme and then putting it into that box, that was it.
Yeah, and that's the concept of these method kind of things. You just have one thing that you have to do. It's an exercise. It's not a masterpiece. I'm always saying this is not a masterpiece. You're not going for a masterpiece. Don't go for a masterpiece. Just do an exercise, and it might turn into something. Do a tool. Do the one tool. And the tool might be as simple as incorporating APA. You know, let's take this to different areas. It might be as simple as let's get into chromatics a little bit and add some flats to your piece. You know, it might be as simple as very, very basic stuff.
Well, the other thing is shamelessly model after other people.
Borrowing.
I mean, I get a gazillion, you probably get a gazillion, particularly teenage people who want to write songs, or pop tunes. You know, so like, do you know how the Beatles put together? You know, what are the different ways that they might put together a song and go into that, so they understand its craftsmanship. It's not just waiting for the inspiration to go through.
I recommend watch the Wednesday with Wynn-Anne videos if this is new. What, I have
so fast I didn't make a connection. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they're really good for breaking through roadblocks, and they're good for getting a student who's not used to creating off of a blank page. It's a nice, easy way and accessible, safe way to kind of get into the creativity of making original music.
Well, it's also persevering. You know, I love to demonstrate, and this is straight off an old Leonard Bernstein transcript, his TV series like in the 60s. Apparently Beethoven took that Fifth Symphony, approximately 15 sketches before he came up with what we now know as the Fifth Symphony opening movement. And if I played the 15 sketches, which is the pentatonic, I could do it at the piano, you laugh your head off. It's awful. No, it's absolutely dreadful. So the idea being that, you know, the way you get to something a little better, like you say, not a masterpiece right away, is sheer persistence.
Yeah.
You know, that it's okay to just keep trying and make mistakes. And, you know, and I said, well, imagine if you'd stopped after the 12th attempt.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, honestly, if I looked at some of my earlier works that made it to publication, I'm like, ugh. Horrid stuff. Yeah, somebody liked it, but not me. I don't know why I sent it in. So, yeah, it's interesting. As a creative, you're always looking forward to the next moment, the next idea. And if you look back, it's dangerous to look back. It's like,
But when you do look back at that thing, you need to bless it.
yes, you're right.
Because that thing took you forward.
Yeah.
So to me, in
I love that.
creativity,
Thank you.
it's really important to bless all of our efforts.
Yeah.
Can I just one quick insight? Yehudi Weiner, I remember years ago, said a really brilliant thing with this kind of fun. He said, if you really want to learn from the great master works and the great masters, great composers, don't just look at their masterpieces. Look at their not so good things. You think, what's that? You know, Schubert, it's been uneven. You know, not everything he penned is, you know. So take a look at the not so great, or the things they discarded. And that's really instructive to me. I would recommend that to everybody. It also humanizes them. I'm not trying to bring them down. It's just that I think we idolize. You know, I always say reverence I believe in. I don't believe in idolizing because that's alienating. Suddenly you say, well, they're special mutants and I can't do that.
Special mutants.
Yeah.
Got time for one more question? If anybody
Okay,
has another
one more.
question.
Yeah.
What about finding motivation for your students?
I think motivation is pretty much everywhere. So it's all kind of how you present it. And of course, the wonderful thing about teaching is that every student is so wonderfully different. So motivating one might be, let's get up and stomp around the room for a second, you know, whereas motivating another might be working on a particular piece. So motivating them to compose, is that what you're talking about? I don't even leave it open for discussion. In other words, I say, this is what you're going to do, just like if I were a teacher in a math class. And I say, this is what you're going to do, and then I deal with the barriers that are there for the student at the time. So I don't want to hold back because of the fear of the student. So I want to get in there a little bit. So an assignment is the best. I don't know if Tchaikovsky said it, but he said, don't give me inspiration, give me a deadline. And I think that's really true. I don't know if Tchaikovsky actually said that, but you might know that.
I heard something similar about Duke Ellington. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would have said, don't give me inspiration, give me a paycheck.
Hey, Wynn-Anne, my favorite is panic focuses the mind.
Well, it's very interesting. I have a lot of deadlines in my writing, and if I'm squeezed, sometimes I am forced to write a B+. And if I have lots of room, sometimes I write a B+ anyway because I've got so much time. So there's like this sweet spot where everything comes together and you just don't know when that's going to happen. But when it does, you're like, yeah, that's it. That's an A. So, thank you so much.